On a night unlike any other, shrouded in mystery and wonder, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, embarked on a journey that would transcend the boundaries of time, space, and human understanding. This was not merely a voyage across lands, but a divine ascent that shook the heavens and left an indelible mark on the hearts of believers. Known as Isra and Mi'raj, this miraculous event is one of the most extraordinary and spiritually profound moments in Islamic history. It unfolded at a time of personal sorrow and societal rejection, offering the Prophet not only divine reassurance, but a sacred duty that would forever shape the rhythm of Muslim life. In the stillness of the night, the Prophet was taken from the sacred mosque in Mecca to the farthest mosque in Jerusalem, and from there, beyond the skies, through the seven heavens. He met the noble prophets who came before him, and ultimately stood in the presence of the Almighty. What he witnessed along the way, visions of paradise and hell, encounters with angels and messengers, the sights and sounds of celestial realms, are beyond imagination, yet deeply rooted in faith. It was during this divine ascent that the 5 daily prayers were ordained, a direct and intimate command from Allah to his messenger, and through him to all of humanity. To hear this story is to be humbled. To reflect on its details is to awaken something deep within the soul. For in this journey lies not only a testament to the power of God, but a window into the unseen realities of the afterlife, the purpose of creation, and the infinite mercy extended to those who believe. It is more than history. It is a shock to the heart, and a reminder of the unseen that surrounds us all. The night began like any other, quiet and still, with the city of Mecca wrapped in darkness. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, rested either by the sacred Kaaba or in the home of his cousin, Hani, unaware that something beyond imagination was about to unfold. Without warning, the veil between the earthly and the divine was lifted. The angel Jibril, majestic and awe-inspiring, appeared before the Prophet. What followed was no ordinary visitation. In a miraculous act, Jibril opened the Prophet's chest, washed his heart with the pure, glistening water from the well of Zamzam, and filled it with light, faith, and divine wisdom. This was not just a physical purification, but a spiritual preparation, one that would ready his soul for the journey that defied the laws of nature and time. Outside, awaiting him, stood a celestial creature unlike any other. It was called Buraq, white, radiant, and swift beyond measure. Neither horse nor donkey, but something in between, Buraq was a heavenly steed capable of crossing vast distances in the blink of an eye. As the Prophet mounted Buraq, guided by Jibril, the journey known as Isra began. In moments, they had soared across the vast Arabian desert and arrived at Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, a city sacred to prophets and scriptures before him. This journey was no ordinary travel. It was the unraveling of dimensions, where space folded and time collapsed under divine command. Every step of the way, the Prophet was guided not just by an angel, but by destiny itself. As he approached the hallowed grounds of Al-Aqsa, he stepped into the echoes of ancient revelation, into a space where the prayers of prophets still lingered in the air. This was only the beginning, a doorway into realms unknown, an invitation into the company of the greatest messengers of God, and a prelude to a journey that would take him not only to the stars, but beyond them, into the very presence of the Almighty. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was greeted not by crowds of people, but by a congregation unlike any the world had ever seen. Within the sacred walls of Masjid al-Aqsa, a divine assembly had gathered, composed not of earthly rulers or scholars, but of prophets, messengers of Allah who had walked the earth in different times and places. There stood Abraham, the father of monotheism; Moses, the liberator of his people; Jesus, the bearer of divine compassion; and many others who had delivered God's message to humanity. Each one had fulfilled a sacred mission, faced trials, and spoken to generations in their own language and context. In this extraordinary moment, it was the Prophet Muhammad who was chosen to lead them all in prayer. As he stood before them and began the prayer, it was more than just a moment of worship. It was a symbolic act that confirmed his position as the final messenger, the seal of the prophets. It was as though all the revelations that had come before now converged into one truth, united under his leadership. The prayer that echoed within the walls of Al-Aqsa that night was not just a ritual. It was a statement to the heavens and the earth that the message of Allah had reached its final form. This sacred gathering wasn't for celebration or ceremony. It was a passing of the torch, a heavenly acknowledgement of the continuity of divine guidance from Adam to Muhammad. For the Prophet, it was both an honor and a weighty confirmation of the responsibility he carried. The walls of that ancient mosque bore witness to the unity of revelation, the brotherhood of prophethood, and the emergence of a new chapter in humanity's spiritual journey, one that was about to ascend beyond the skies. With the prayer at Al-Aqsa complete, and the echoes of the sacred gathering still lingering in the air, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was prepared for the next phase of the miraculous journey. This was the moment when Earth would give way to the skies, when the fabric of the universe would be peeled back, allowing a mortal to glimpse what no eye had seen before. Accompanied by the angel Jibril, he began the celestial ascent, the Mi'raj, a journey through the seven heavens, each one more wondrous than the last, each encounter more profound, and each moment carrying a weight that stretched the boundaries of human understanding. As they rose toward the first heaven, Jibril sought permission to enter. A voice from beyond asked, "Who is it?" And Jibril responded with his name, adding that he was with Muhammad. When the gatekeeper was told that the Prophet had indeed been sent for, the doors were opened. Inside the first heaven, the Prophet Muhammad met Adam, the father of humanity. Adam welcomed him warmly, calling him a righteous son and a noble prophet. Around Adam were the souls of his descendants, those of the righteous smiling on one side and the wicked weeping on the other. It was a reminder of the great responsibility that came with free will and the consequences that would follow in the hereafter. The journey continued, and upon reaching the second heaven, again, permission was requested and granted. There, the Prophet met two figures who greeted him with affection and respect: Jesus, son of Mary, and his cousin John the Baptist, also known as Yahya. Their presence exuded peace and wisdom, and their words carried the weight of divine compassion and dedication. The bond between them was clear, and their embrace of Muhammad symbolized the harmony between the messages they had all carried. In the third heaven, the Prophet encountered Joseph, whose beauty was said to be unmatched, with half of all human beauty granted to him alone. Yusuf welcomed him graciously, and the sight of his radiant face was a glimpse into the perfection that could only come from divine design. It was not only physical beauty, but a reflection of inner purity and faith that shone from Yusuf's being. Upon reaching the fourth heaven, the Prophet met Idris, a prophet known for his wisdom, devotion, and steadfastness in worship. Idris was raised to a high station, and his acknowledgement of Muhammad was filled with reverence and serenity. Their exchange spoke of divine elevation and the reward that comes from perseverance in the path of righteousness. In the fifth heaven, the Prophet met Harun, the brother of Moses. Harun greeted him with a brother's love and spoke with gentleness. His presence carried the essence of community and leadership, as Harun had stood beside his brother to guide the children of Israel. His words were filled with warmth and recognition of Muhammad's role in guiding the final community of believers. As the Prophet entered the sixth heaven, he encountered Moses, one of the mightiest messengers of Allah. Musa was both welcoming and emotional. Upon learning of Muhammad's mission and the destiny of his nation, Musa wept. When asked why, He replied that he had hoped his nation would be the largest among those admitted to paradise, but now he saw that Muhammad's community would surpass his. His tears were not born of jealousy, but of sincerity, and the immense love he held for his own people. This meeting held even greater significance as Musa would later play a role in advising the Prophet during his meeting with Allah. Finally, in the seventh heaven, the Prophet met Abraham, leaning against the celestial Kaaba, known as Bayt al-Ma'mur, a heavenly house directly above the earthly Kaaba, visited by 70,000 angels each day, never to return again. Ibrahim welcomed him as a father welcomes a beloved son, expressing joy and offering guidance. He spoke of the importance of prayer and unity, advising the Prophet to convey peace and blessings to his nation. Each level of the heavens offered more than just a meeting. It offered a connection, a reaffirmation of the divine message across ages. The Prophet's journey through the seven heavens was not only a physical ascent, but a spiritual unveiling, a passage through the corridors of divine legacy. Every prophet he encountered stood as a witness to the same eternal truth, the oneness of Allah and the sacred duty to guide humanity. In these moments, Muhammad stood not just as a man, but as the final bearer of a timeless message, bridging the heavens and the earth. Beyond the seventh heaven, where creation thins and even the light becomes sacred, stood a majestic symbol known only to those granted the highest divine favor, Sidrat al-Muntaha, the lotus tree of the utmost boundary. It was here that the realms of the created and the Creator drew a line, a point beyond which no being, not even the Archangel Jibril, could pass. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, stood at the foot of this radiant tree, its branches stretching in ways that defied the limits of space, its leaves luminous like emeralds and its fruit glowing like vessels of gold. It shimmered with colors and textures unknown to this world, a vision so overwhelming that it is said the human mind could not fully grasp its beauty or meaning. This sacred boundary marked the final stop for Jibril, who paused and turned to the Prophet with a heavy reverence in his voice. "If I go beyond this point," he said, "I will be consumed." The angel who had guided prophets and delivered revelation now stood still, witnessing a moment no other creature could claim. Alone, the Prophet continued forward, wrapped in divine light, guided only by the invitation of his Lord. What lay beyond the lotus tree was a mystery wrapped in splendor. The Prophet advanced into a realm of intimacy and divine nearness, a place reserved for a singular soul chosen by Allah. It was here that the highest mysteries of existence unfolded before him, where time stood still and the eternal truths of the universe were whispered into his heart. In this supreme moment, he experienced a closeness to Allah that no other being had ever attained, a moment outside of time, immersed in pure light, awe, and divine majesty. As the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, moved deeper into the realms of the unseen, he was granted visions that few could ever imagine, glimpses of the ultimate destinations that await every soul. Among the most profound and soul-shaking moments of his celestial journey were his encounters with paradise and hell, two eternal realities that stood in stark contrast, one overflowing with mercy, the other echoing with justice. In paradise, he saw unimaginable beauty. Lush gardens stretched endlessly, filled with trees whose trunks were made of gold and whose shade offered peace beyond description. Rivers flowed, not with water alone, but with milk, honey, and pure wine untainted by intoxication. He witnessed palaces made of pearl and sapphire, and the laughter of those who dwelled in bliss, a reward for their faith, patience, and righteousness. The scents of Jannah filled the air, fragrances that soothed the soul and lifted the heart. It was a place where no eye had seen, no ear had heard, and no mind had ever conceived such splendor. Everything there whispered of Allah's mercy and infinite generosity. Yet the Prophet was also shown hell, a place of darkness, agony, and consequence. He saw people punished in terrifying ways, each torment reflecting the sins they committed in life. Flames roared with ceaseless hunger. Chains rattled and cries echoed from depths that chilled the heart. It was a realm of regret, where the soul could feel the weight of its choices without reprieve. He saw those who betrayed trust, who lied, who oppressed others, all meeting their recompense. These visions were not meant to terrify for the sake of fear, but to awaken the heart, to serve as a warning and a guidepost. In witnessing both realms, the prophet carried back not just a message, but a mirror to humanity's fate. In the most sacred and exalted part of his journey, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was brought into the divine presence, an honor no other created being had ever received. There are no human words capable of fully describing what took place in that sacred meeting. It was a moment beyond time, space, and comprehension. The details remain veiled in mystery, preserved in the folds of divine mercy. Yet its outcome would shape the spiritual rhythm of every Muslim's daily life until the end of time. It was here, in this intimate nearness to Allah, that the 5 daily prayers were revealed, an eternal gift for the Prophet's nation. Initially, Allah ordained 50 prayers each day. The Prophet accepted this with reverence, but as he descended, he was stopped by Moses, peace be upon him, who asked what had been prescribed. Upon hearing of the 50, Moses advised him to return and ask for a reduction, knowing from experience the limits of human endurance. Out of concern for his followers, the Prophet returned to Allah, and the number was gradually reduced. 40, then 30, then 20, then 10, until finally it was set at 5. Yet with Allah's infinite mercy, the reward remained as though 50 were still being offered. This exchange between the Prophet and his Lord, with Moses interceding along the way, revealed not only the spiritual magnitude of prayer, but also the compassion that weaves through divine commands. These 5 daily prayers were not burdens, but lifelines, anchors that would pull the hearts of believers back to their Creator throughout each day. Each one became a chance for remembrance, reflection, renewal, and intimacy with the divine. To this day, every prostration offered by a believer echoes the Prophet's ascent, a small taste of that celestial journey. Prayer is more than ritual. It is a conversation with Allah, a moment of surrender and elevation. It connects the ordinary to the eternal, the earthly to the divine, and reminds the soul that it was created not to wander aimlessly, but to rise again and again toward the light of its Creator. In the most sacred and awe-inspiring moment of the celestial journey, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, stood alone in the divine presence. No angel, no prophet, not even Jibril could accompany him beyond the boundary of creation. What occurred in that space of pure light and holiness remains largely concealed, wrapped in reverence and mystery. But what is known is that it was during this intimate meeting that a gift unlike any other was bestowed upon his nation, the obligation of daily prayer. Allah initially prescribed 50 prayers each day. The Prophet accepted this command with full submission and began his descent. On his way down, he encountered the Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, who asked what Allah had commanded. When the Prophet Muhammad told him, Musa urged him to return and request a reduction. He explained that he had experienced leading a nation before and knew that such a burden would be too great. Out of deep compassion for his people, Muhammad returned to Allah and humbly asked for a reduction. This back and forth continued several times, each time bringing the number lower, until finally it was reduced to 5. Though the number of prayers was lightened, Allah, in His infinite mercy, declared that the reward would remain as though 50 were still performed. This extraordinary kindness revealed both the profound love of Allah for His creation and the intercessory concern of the Prophet for his people. The daily prayers were not merely a command but a sacred bridge, a means of connecting the hearts of believers to their Lord multiple times a day. Through these prayers, the soul would rise again and again toward its origin, renewing faith, cleansing the heart, and strengthening the bond with the divine. What was gifted in the heavens would echo on earth for generations to come. 5 moments each day to remember who we are, where we came from, and to whom we will ultimately return. As the journey came to an end, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was returned to Jerusalem and then swiftly carried back to Mecca before the break of dawn. What had transpired in a single night had stretched beyond time, encompassing miracles, divine encounters, and revelations that would shape the spiritual foundation of Islam forever. Yet upon his return, the Prophet faced not celebration, but fierce resistance. The story of the night journey and ascension, with its accounts of traveling across vast distances and ascending through the heavens, was so staggering that many found it impossible to believe. When he shared the details with the Quraysh, the reaction was swift and mocking. They laughed, scoffed, and used the story as fuel to deepen their campaign of slander. To them, it was the perfect opportunity to discredit the Prophet, portraying him as a man lost in fantasy. They asked sharp questions, challenging the credibility of his claim. What did Al-Aqsa look like? Were there any caravans along the way? Could he describe them in detail? They were certain they would catch him in a mistake. But with clarity and calm, the Prophet answered each question with stunning accuracy. He described Masjid al-Aqsa's architecture, its doors, its surroundings, details only someone who had truly been there could know. He even told them about a caravan he had seen during the journey, including the number of camels, their markings, and the timing of their arrival in Mecca. When the caravan arrived just as he described, some hearts wavered. Yet still, many chose denial over belief. This moment was not just a test for the Prophet, it was a trial of faith for the believers. While doubt crept into some hearts, others grew stronger, holding fast to their trust in the truth he brought. In the midst of confusion and mockery that followed the Prophet Muhammad's account of the miraculous night journey, one man's unwavering faith stood like a mountain, calm, firm, and immovable. When the news of the Prophet's claim reached Abu Bakr, the Quraysh hurried to him, certain that even he would not accept such an unbelievable story. They approached him with smirks and sarcasm, saying, "Do you hear what your friend says? That he went to Jerusalem and then to the heavens, all in one night?" They expected disbelief, or at the very least, hesitation. But Abu Bakr did not flinch. His response was simple, powerful, and unforgettable. If he said it, then it is certainly true. With those words, he earned the eternal title As-Siddiq, the truthful one. His immediate and unquestioning belief was not based on blind loyalty, but on deep trust in the character, integrity, and divine connection of the Prophet. Abu Bakr knew Muhammad was not a man of lies or exaggeration. If he claimed something so incredible, then it must have happened. His faith in that moment uplifted the believers who were shaken and silenced the doubts of those who wavered. Abu Bakr's certainty became a light for others, a beacon of strength when confusion loomed large. His loyalty did not just affirm his own faith, it reinforced the foundation of the early Muslim community. In a time of ridicule and rejection, his voice rang clear and true, standing as a reminder that real faith shines brightest in moments of trial. The miraculous journey of Isra and Mi'raj did not fade into obscurity with the passing of time. Instead, it became a living memory, woven into the spiritual fabric of the Muslim world. Each year, believers commemorate that sacred night, not merely as a historical event, but as a moment of divine closeness, awe, and mercy that continues to echo through the hearts of the faithful. Across cities and villages, mosques are illuminated, their minarets glowing softly in honor of the night the Prophet ascended through the heavens. The air fills with the gentle murmur of Quran recitation, supplications, and reflections on the meanings hidden within that sacred journey. Under the Ottoman Empire, this night took on a cultural beauty as well. Lamps were lit in mosques, creating a radiant display called the Night of Mi'raj palms, symbolizing spiritual light and guidance. Gatherings were held where the story of the Prophet's journey was retold with reverence, and communities came together in devotion and unity. Special prayers were offered, poems were recited, and traditional hospitality was extended with offerings of tea and milk, reminders of generosity, remembrance, and togetherness. But beyond the outer forms, the true legacy of Mi'raj lies in its message. It calls the believer to ascend, not through the skies, but through sincerity, prayer, and nearness to Allah. It invites hearts to rise above the distractions of the world and seek the light that guided the Prophet through the heavens. It is a night of reflection, a call to deepen faith, and a reminder that divine mercy always waits for those who journey toward it. The story of Isra and Mi'raj, though embraced universally by Muslims for its spiritual depth and miraculous nature, has also inspired thoughtful reflection and diverse interpretations throughout Islamic history. While the central truth of the journey remains untouched, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem and ascended through the heavens, scholars have differed on how exactly this event unfolded. Some have viewed it as a physical journey, one in which the Prophet's body and soul were both taken through the realms of the unseen. This view emphasizes the boundless power of Allah, who can suspend natural laws and carry his servant through dimensions unknown to man. Others have suggested that the journey took place in a vision or dream, believing that such an experience, granted by Allah, could be just as real and meaningful. These scholars see the journey as symbolic, a spiritual ascent that conveyed divine truths through powerful imagery and revelation. Still, many scholars uphold the belief that the Prophet was fully awake, experiencing the journey both physically and spiritually, with all of its beauty, awe, and wonder. Rather than divide, these interpretations reveal the richness of Islamic thought and the deep reverence Muslims have for this event. They demonstrate that the essence of Mi'raj transcends the mechanics of how it occurred. What matters most is the light it brought into the world, the prayer it established, the faith it affirmed, and the invitation it extended to every heart seeking nearness to the divine. The journey of Isra and Mi'raj is not just a miraculous event from the past. It is a timeless message whispered across the ages. It reminds us that no matter how heavy life becomes, the heavens are never far from those who seek Allah with sincerity. In a single night, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was shown the beauty of paradise, the warnings of hell, the company of prophets, and the embrace of the divine. Through him, we were gifted the daily prayers, a sacred thread that connects our hearts to the heavens 5 times a day. This journey teaches us that faith can elevate the soul beyond the limits of the world, that struggles can be followed by divine gifts, and that closeness to Allah is always within reach. Let this story awaken your spirit, strengthen your resolve, and guide you on your own path toward light, purpose, and eternal peace.